pastor is out visiting his brand new granddaughter in Colorado. So I think the weight's in there if you care about stuff like that. So yeah, I've heard everything's going well, and he's out enjoying beautiful Colorado instead of being with us. So I'm up here instead. So you guys have to deal with me. Sorry. But he told me I could preach on whatever I wanted, and he's been kind of doing this series on Amazing Grace. I kind of looked at that, and there was one week I realized I was sitting there, and I'm like, this is stuff I've heard before. This is stuff that I've been hearing my whole life. This is stuff that, that's kind of basic. Like, why are you talking about that? And for a second, I thought that I didn't need to listen to what he was saying. And it was at that moment where I kind of realized that there are a lot of times in my life that, since I've experienced his grace, that I kind of take it for granted. I realized there were points in my life that I would go weeks or months without really thinking about that grace and thinking about what I received. And so because of that, I wanted to take some time and talk about what it means to live in amazing grace. And I think part of the reason that I didn't feel that grace all the time is because it wasn't some physical event that we could experience in our lifetime, right? If we were alive when Jesus died on the cross, that might be different. Like, you could see that grace and you could see him dying there. Or if it was visual when his grace poured into me. But that didn't happen. And I think since I'm very visual, it's hard to always see his grace and see where he is. So I want to share a little story in hopes that we can better visualize what he did for us and better picture what his grace is so that we can keep it on our minds all the time. So if you think way back with me to my first Sunday here, a long time ago, you guys threw me what you called a man shower. And if you weren't there, everybody kind of pitched in a gift or two and just blessed me with so much. I was just kind of blown away by how much you guys had given to me and how much I had received. And so I kind of want to share with you what happened after I received those gifts. So first, I had to gather up a few friends and load up my car and take like 10 trips up there because there was so much stuff. Then we drove it home, got it unloaded, and then after I unloaded it, I called my parents. I called my mom and dad, people who were close to me, to tell them what I had got, what happened to me, and just kind of shared that experience with them. And from there, I went on to tell some other family. I told my brothers, I told my grandparents, I told some of my friends about it when they asked how things were going. And I was just completely overwhelmed by what I had received. So I spent a couple days trying to think of ways to thank you. I tried to figure out how I can say thank you to this many people. And, I kind of came to a conclusion that there was nothing I could really do to thank you guys. There were so many gifts, and a lot of them didn't include cards, so I had no clue who they were from. And I came to a conclusion that nothing I did, nothing I said, no matter how hard I tried, I was never going to be able to thank you guys enough. So if I didn't get to say thank you to you, here it is now. Thank you. But just because I couldn't say thank you enough didn't mean that I didn't try. I probably told several of you several times thank you for what you gave me. I spent time thinking about that. I constantly went back to it for probably a week or so. That was like, wake up in the morning, oh, remember this that happened? And I also told a bunch of people about it. I told them what happened. And in a minute, I'm going to come back to this story. In a minute, I'm going to come back, make some connections with this story, and kind of tie it in. But for a second, I need you guys to put on your thinking caps and imagine something with me. So, imagine if instead of giving me a man shower and some housewarming gifts, you guys decided to pitch in and actually just give me a whole house. But not just any house, a mansion. So, I'm talking about a mansion with a pool, everything you want. A basketball court, a movie theater, and my personal favorite is an entire room just cotton candy, right? Uh, if you have one room in your house that you could do whatever you wanted with, that's it right there. You can go eat it all the time. You can lay in it. Look how comfortable that. So anyway, that's me being weird. Let me get back on track. Um, right? So, uh, what would you do if someone gave you that? Right? You know, it was hard for me to say thanks for what I received in those other gifts, but what would I say if you guys gave me an entire mansion with all that stuff? Um, you know, I don't know that I would know where to start. Um, if that happened, I don't think I could ever stop thinking about what happened to me. That would be on my mind all the time. I would constantly be thinking about it and trying to find ways to thank people for it. Um, and I don't think a day would go by without me looking back on that gift and looking at what I received. And I think I would try to do things to show the people that gave it to me that I appreciated them. I would find the person who gave it, and, you know, I would probably try to treat them like they were royalty, you know, invite them over, prepare my best food, which I'm a terrible cook, so it's probably ramen. Prepare my best food, prepare my best drinks, serve them like they are royalty because they gave me so much. I want to give back, right? And, you know, if I was feeling really good, really generous, I might let you jump in my room of cotton candy. But, yeah, so the gifts I received were incredible, right? That mansion would be a step above. That would be incredible as well. But God's grace is so much more than that, right? You know, it's not like the housewarming gifts are here and the mansion's here and then God's grace is here. No, it's like the housewarming gifts are here, God's grace, the mansion is here, and then God's grace is way up there. And I'm pretty tall, so, right? So the gifts can't really even be compared. That is so much more than what we received in this. So I want to jump real quick to a passage from Ephesians. We're going to look at Ephesians chapter 2, verses 1 through 5. Feel free to follow along on the screen or in your own Bibles. I will give you a second to get there. So, all right. So, I'm going to need to walk this way because that's a little smaller than I remembered. But it says, "As for you, you were dead in your transgressions and sins, in which you used to live when you followed the ways of the world and of the ruler of the kingdom of the air, the spirit who is now at work in those who are disobedient. All of us also lived among them at one time, gratifying the cravings of our flesh and following its desires and thoughts. Like the rest, we were by nature deserving of wrath, but because of his great love for us, God, who is rich in mercy, made us alive with Christ, even when we were dead in transgressions. It is by grace that you have been saved." And I want to focus on the last part of that real quick. I want to focus on the part where it says that we were dead in our sins, but now we're alive in Christ. And I think for me, I spent a while in my life thinking that, you know, before Christ I was a bad person, but after I experienced Christ, I became a good person, right? But I think Paul says so much more than that here. He says we were dead and now we're alive. You know, there's such a drastic difference between going from bad to good people, right? Your parents can make you into a good person. Your teachers can probably make you into a good person. But nobody can make you alive, right? Christ is the only one who can take us from being dead to being alive. And I don't think there's anything greater in this world that we can receive than life. Even though this gift of God's grace through his son Jesus is so much better than what the two gifts I talked about before, I want to go ahead and look at those two gifts and kind of glean some comparisons and try to take some insight from those to see how we can apply it to our reaction to God's grace. So I want to talk about 4 different things. The first of these is that maybe we're supposed to allow God's grace that we've received to be on our minds all the time, right? So I think that if we've received this great of a gift, we look at, going back to gifts I received, that probably for a week, I kept thinking about those. But if we receive this gift of life, we should be thinking about that all the time. He's our only reason we're alive, and in that, we need to be constantly keeping him on our mind. For some reason, though, I think we go through these periods where we can go days or weeks or even months without thinking about him, without thinking about the grace we received through Jesus. And that shouldn't be the case. I think part of the problem is our view on God's grace, right? A lot of times we think of God's grace as this one-time past event. We think of it when I was in 10th grade, when I went to that conference and said, I want Jesus in my life. That is the point where I received God's grace. But I don't think we're doing it justice by talking about it like that. Since that day, I've received so much more, and I've continued to experience his grace day after day after day. And God's grace is a current event. It's not a past event. It didn't happen to us. We didn't receive God's grace. We are receiving God's grace over and over and over. And as humans, unless you're not human, which is kind of weird, but as humans, we constantly fall short. Did that turn off? Yeah, okay. As humans, we constantly fall short of God's glory, and we need his grace every day. And I can change our thinking from looking at it as a past event to a present event, that we can experience his grace and keep it on our mind every single day. So, right, what if I come into church every day and I see another table of gifts just waiting for me, right? That's going to be on my mind. And if that happens day after day after day, if I walked in this morning and there was another man shower, which you should do, but